Thanks for joining us for Elko Live today. This program is pre-recorded just a day in advance to allow our superintendent a chance to be two places at once. CJ Anderson, our school superintendent, here for our regular monthly update in Elko County School News. CJ, thank you for coming on the program, as you always do.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, and I'll actually be in a lot of places tomorrow, so I appreciate you letting me pre-record. Limited opportunities to deliver our STARS Awards every month, and so we, I don't feel bad saying this today because it's not going to air till tomorrow, when by that time I'll have already delivered them, but we've got a STARS Award winner out in Jackpot and one out in West Wendover as well, so I don't know too many superintendents that would be driving that many miles to different school sites on the same day, but that's what I'll be doing tomorrow, and excited to go with our board member and Adriana Lara, as well as Kayla Church, our communication specialist, to go properly congratulate and appreciate a couple folks who are well-deserving recipients of the STARS Award.
That's great news. Thanks, CJ, for letting us know. And again, thanks in advance for traveling those great distances to recognize those schools. And if anybody listening is interested, you can nominate someone for the STARS Award. It's a great community collaboration, a lot of local business sponsors. There are details on the school website, ecsdnv.net. And we appreciate that opportunity to recognize all kinds of employees in the school district. So some fantastic news as a result of Tuesday's school board meeting, and that is that you have a bidder, or you had someone successful to build the Owyhee School.
Yep. We got a bid that came in at we'll just call it an acceptable dollar amount for the amount that was appropriated from the state, and for this particular project, and that bid was accepted. MGM is the contractor who put that bid in, and we've worked with MGM lots of times all around Elko County, and so they're very familiar with our county and the challenges that exist there, and they've kind of been good partners with us from the beginning of trying to figure this out, even through our last unsuccessful bid. They were great to bounce ideas off of and have them help us understand kind of what the challenges were with the project and the scope that it was in at that time, which helped us to refine that scope. And we had a few others that were kind of at the table pretty late in the game, but in the end decided not to submit a bid. But yeah, we're excited to have a bid that's been accepted. There was a base bid that was accepted, as well as there were 8 alternate bids to go along with that, and we're trying to figure out a way to make sure we can get those alternate bids funded also.
Because while it is exciting news, you got $64.5 million, but you did have to dial back a bit in order to cover the cost.
Yes, yeah, because the original scope that did not have a successful bid about 4 months ago, that one had quite a few more elements to the project. That I know that the Shoshone Paiute tribe up there in Duck Valley, they are very interested in still getting those pieces done, but as far as just staying within budget on this particular appropriation, it was necessary to scale things back so we could do the main school facility, as well as essential components of that, such as a playground for the elementary students, parking lots, basic landscaping, etc. So it's a combined school. It is a combined school, yeah, combined K-12. In fact, I believe they have pre-K as well out there. Having to figure out just what are the kind of the bare bones necessities in order for them to be able to have a school that can meet the needs of their students, but also do so equitably, right? We can't just we're not going to set up a subpar facility for students out there. They deserve the same quality of facilities that if we were to build a new school here in town, that it would contain all the same type of things. So, again, always trying to keep equity at the forefront and make sure the students get the facilities they need, and so they can have the best possible education they can have. Great. So more to come on that. And of course, keep listening. We'll be happy to provide details if Owyhee does end up with, they need community help or fundraising for things like the football field or some other things that they would like to see implemented as time goes by. That'll be really important, CJ. So, yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah. So another thing that came along, let's talk about this, the funding formula, AB 519, county commissioners prevailing in their lawsuit. It ties in, although not really, because the Owyhee school funding is separate. We want to make sure that we
Always lead with that. That does not come out of the Elko County school funding per se. That was a separate legislative issue, right, CJ?
Yeah, and I appreciate. I actually was thinking of that as I was speaking before, and I'm glad you brought it back up. Yeah, so the $64.5 million that were allocated, that was money that the school district did not have, that the taxpayers had not funded in Elko County, and the state legislators almost unanimously, all but one person from both the Senate and the Assembly, like I said, almost unanimously agreed to pass that bill. And so they pulled $64.5 million from state funding sources, not from Elko County funding sources, and allocated that to us for the purpose of constructing this building. So yeah, that's very important. However, where you're going with that is that was an element of Assembly Bill 519 from 2 years ago at the last legislative session. But there were a lot of other elements of AB 519 that existed. One of those having to do with the lawsuit that our county commissioners brought against the state for some language that was in that bill. That language essentially required Elko County and only Elko County, based on the way the language was written, to forcibly levy a tax to provide for capital funding for our school district. And something I point out a lot, as much as I can, is just as much as the appropriation for Owyhee was not Elko County School District's idea, neither was the entirety of Assembly Bill 519. Most of the time, we are all in a position where we have to react to legislation that is passed every session, and that is the boat we were in last time. While we supported the Shoshone-Paiute tribe of Duck Valley to go ahead and make that request for an appropriation, it was not our bill. We didn't seek a sponsor. We wanted to support our students and our friends out there in the tribal council, and so then when that was successful, and of course now we're here to manage those funds and build a school as was dictated in legislation. Like we had to do something that legislation told us to do, and the same went for the county felt like they were in a similar position where, wow, this legislation is telling us we have to do this thing of levy a tax, because at that time there was no tax anymore for capital improvement for our schools. And I think my guess is the legislators saw this request for an appropriation and said, well, why aren't you guys doing it? And we said, well, we don't have any funds coming. And they said, well, that's a problem, and tried to come up with a solution. But yeah, so now the county has won that lawsuit. So in all probability, AB 518 will have to be amended during this session. I'm guessing the language that'll have to be amended is just that of isolating or singling out Elko County and requiring it of them to do so. But it's still up to the county commission whether or not they want to continue to do that. And I'll say that in every meeting I've been in, whether it's a county commission meeting or in a capital improvement oversight panel meeting, which was also another element required by AB 519, the words that I've heard from our county commissioners are that we don't resent giving money to the school district for capital improvement purposes, because they self-admittedly recognize that there are needs in our schools. What they resented was being singled out among all of the counties in the state. And so by that logic, to me that means, well, they don't resent giving us the money. So we're hoping that continues to come in. And even as recently as about a week or two ago, they kind of recommitted to doing that for another year. And so we're still really hoping and banking on that money coming in, because there are severe needs that exist across many of our schools that will go unmet without some sort of funding source. In fact, our Superintendent, C.J. Anderson, who's our guest today here on Elko Live, you talked about that during that very subcommittee meeting that you described, before county commissioners. The commission has oversight now, essentially, of
the capital fund that is spent by the school district, even though there is a governing board of trustees. The trustees and the school are accountable in a sense to the county commission for this fund that is captured as a result of a new distribution. So pay as you go is almost done. You had something like $2 million left, CJ?
Yeah, we anticipate by the end of this fiscal year, so come July 1st, we will probably be down somewhere around the $2 million remaining from the amount that was left over after the bond and the election happened some years ago. The failure of that. Yep.
Okay. So I think it's just important just to remind people the funding source for our schools. So Pay As You Go was a capital fund in particular, voted and approved by taxpayers historically. That no longer exists. So the school district now goes to the county commission essentially, who holds the purse strings for the capital fund. And there's nothing to suggest, as you just said, that that's going to change as a result of the successful lawsuit on AB 519. So switching gears, we do know that the school district is reliant on the money that you get from the state. Legislature's in session right now. We had guests on from the Nevada Classical Academy of Elko, and they're excited about their new charter school, CJ, and Joe DeBraga, who's a founding board member, he said, our classical academy, we're a public school, but he said, we get $3,000 less per pupil than school district does. So it's about $13,000, I guess, per student. Is that something that concerns the school district, or when we have new charter schools, for example?
Does it concern me that the charter schools are getting less per student than us?
Yeah. I mean, is there an explanation for that? Or is that something you know about, or?
No, I think that, there's a couple things that I understand. Number one, I think that the state recognizes that there are elements in the K-12 public schools and what we have to do and what we're required to do and programs we have to run that don't necessarily exist in all charter schools. And so in general, charters across the board do receive less funding. However, it's also my understanding that there are plans to address that in this current legislative session. While it would be great to say, hey, we'd love some additional funds, like I understand that is a choice that a lot of people make, and those kids have just as much right to a quality education as anybody else does. And so if that's how the governor and the legislature wish to proceed and provide some additional funding, I know not only do they plan on giving funding for seeking to, pass bills that would allow for additional funding for charter schools, for teacher salaries, for potentially to add transportation to charter schools. So I think they're looking at ways to kind of balance that out a little more. I'm certainly not interested in, or would I find myself opposing charter schools receiving more funds. There's been multiple times over the last 2 to 3 years with the EIAA moving things around, as well as this new charter school, the Classical Academy, seeking approval, where I've been supportive of helping them out as soon as I totally understand what their model is and what they're trying to do. But in the end, we care about education, we care about kids, and so what I want to say is that if they do receive additional funds, that's great for them, and I'm excited for those students to receive everything they deserve to receive in an education. It doesn't sound like they'd be taking from this. This is where I would have a problem if they were going to be removing funds from the people-centered funding plan in order to, from the K-12 schools to give it to charter schools. That would be a little more of a challenge because now you're reducing our funding to do that. But I think that the legislature or the governor or some combination of those folks will be seeking to appropriate other funds specifically for the charters, not necessarily removing from the other schools in order to do such a thing.
CJ Anderson is our guest. He's our school superintendent. CJ, thank you. These aren't always the most fun conversations, but people are talking about it, especially now that we have this scrutiny going on at the national level. And that's where it brings in this topic of if the Department of Education is ended, which is that's a serious discussion that's happening right now. What would the impacts be, say, even to the Elko County School District? I mean, how much federal money do we get, and for what, CJ?
Yeah, so I don't have any problem saying I don't know to most of that, Lori, and the reason I don't have much of a problem saying that is because I don't think the people at the federal government level even know what this is going to look like. I think that in the recent weeks, there's been multiple things that have come from Washington, D.C. that, were very sudden, were very passionate and, very along the lines of certain agendas. And so when those things are proclaimed or ordered or mandated, however you want to look at it, just like we do now, there are agencies that govern. We're all governed by something, right? And in our case, in education, there's the U.S. Department of Education. We also have the Nevada Department of Education, and then locally we have the Elko County School District, right? And so you have these layers of bureaucracy essentially that require you to do certain things, and just like a teenager doesn't appreciate being told to go to bed, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you got to go to bed, and like that's just the way that works when you get something from higher up, right? And so in our case, whether it's from the U.S. Department of Ed or from the Nevada Department of Education, we as a school district have to kind of follow through with certain requirements, and especially when those requirements are attached to funding. And I know it's easy on one hand to say, well, just don't accept the funding, and then you don't have to do the requirements. Well, yeah, the funding is pretty important because there are laws as well that say you must serve X type of student with X type of service, and right. And so if we just don't accept their funding, well, we still have to serve those students, or we find ourselves in lawsuits, and plus it's the right thing to do. Like we're supposed to, again, going back to equity of access and equity in our education, like we need to make sure students are equitably able to access education the best they can so that they can experience success however that looks for that student and that family. And so, going back to your original question of what does this mean for us, I don't have a dollar amount to tell you, but there are certain there's certain things that we kind of attach to the U.S. Department of Education. We often think about Title I funds, and Title I funds, for people who aren't as familiar, are for students who experience a certain level of poverty, and so we certainly have entire communities within our school district, as well as pockets of other communities that definitely fall into that category, and so in order to be able to provide needs where there are gaps in people's ability to have what they need, we are provided with Title I funds to do those things and to improve the quality of access for those students. So that's one thing we attach. Another funding source that we attach to the Department of Ed sometimes is IDEA funds, and those are our funds for special education students. It costs a lot to educate to educate special education students. Some of them a lot more than others. If, like, for example, there are some who just have, for a certain disability, it just means they get a visit from someone for a certain number of minutes a week. But there are others. I mean, we have some students who are 2 or 3 adults assigned to one kid kind of thing. And I mean, if you think of a salary for one person as in the neighborhood of around $100,000 once benefits and everything are included into it, like that's an expensive child. And it's okay that it's expensive. That's just what it costs to provide.
It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. And that's what it costs to provide FAPE, which is a free and appropriate public education, to that student, which they all deserve FAPE. We always, it's easier just to say FAPE than the long version. So in any case, so those are 2 like real big pockets, because there was a lot of talk recently about other federal funding sources being frozen and what's going to happen with those in the long run. Those other ones like Title IIA and Title III and Title VI, and there's a lot of different and they usually start with the word title, but there's a lot of different federal funds we receive. But the big ones are Title I and IDEA funds. And so, but those, what I like to remind people is both Title I funds and IDEA, those existed prior to even the establishment of the U.S. Department of Education. That hasn't been around since the founding fathers, right? Like that's a much more modern organization and structure. And so, if that department were to be totally disbanded or whatever, which, by the way, would require a supermajority vote of Congress. If that were to somehow be disbanded, it is I think it would be a knee-jerk reaction to assume that would also mean Title I funds are going away and IDEA. More likely what would happen is if the department itself is disbanded, things that they are responsible for administering and implementing would simply be absorbed by other departments, is more what I'm understanding. However, going back to the way I started that, I don't know. Nobody knows.
Well, and thank you for even going there, because this is just what we hear. Nobody knows. There's a lot of uncertainty. People do want to know, and they care a great deal. And CJ, our school district has, I think it's fair to say, over 9,500 students. You have hundreds of employees. You're I think, like the third largest employer in the county, second largest employer in the county. Your budget is over $100.
It's over $100
million. Mm-hmm. So. Yep. Definitely a lot of moving parts. And so thank you for having these conversations. And so people can at least say, I heard the school superintendent say, and that gives them at least some, reasonable ground for having other conversations in the community, right? Instead of just living on memes.
Right.
Yes. So thank you, CJ. Appreciate that. So we also want to talk about some of the really cool and happy things that students and parents are involved in. In fact, there is the spelling bee that's happening this weekend, right? This week?
Yeah, this Friday. I think 10 a.m., if I'm not mistaken, is when the spelling bee will happen. This is the district spelling bee where the certain students that emerge victorious would be eligible to participate in the state spelling bee that usually occurs in late March. So yeah, we've got 60-something kids who are going to be there or who are eligible to be there and participate. And
where's it going to be this year? Do you know?
I think it's at the Elko High Performing Arts Building.
Oh,
if
great.
I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
I should probably know. There's someone close to me that is participating in it, and I need to be there.
Yes, you will be.
I'm a day by day kind of guy with some of my schedule. But yeah, it's exciting. I've been there every year for the last 3 years. It's always pretty impressive to watch these. I mean, once you get past a couple of rounds, those kids are spelling words that I think a lot of adults kind of look at each other like, I don't know.
Trust me, I used to be the pronouncer. I did that for years and years. I loved it. I loved doing it, but that is the event that I would lose sleep over the night before, because I thought, this has to be.
I'm going to get a word wrong,
yes.
And the kid's going to get out, and you're going to feel so bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It would be the worst. But so spectators are welcome. Cheer on the students. This is just a really cool thing that our school district does. So the spelling bee. Yeah.
And I love this, and we'll probably get to some other things, but like anytime, we give a lot of attention to certain talents and programs
athletics.
that kids.
It's okay. It's all right.
we give a lot of attention to athletics and others as well. Like
and we should.
For example, in Elko, the choraleers and the band are beloved, right? And so, there are things that just generally get more attention, and that varies from community to community. But I just love any opportunity where we can get to highlight the wonderful things that our students, because our kids excel in so many different ways. I'll often hear some people say, well, we should give just as much attention to the academics as we do to the athletics. And the reality is we have a lot of opportunities to highlight the academics. We at all of our board meetings, whenever we're acknowledging all state runners up and champions, we always recognize academic all-state students. When we, at the end of the school year, we recognize the number one student in every graduating class of every high school, right? We highlight those. We highlight the spelling bee kids. We highlight kids from CTE organizations who achieve at the state and national level. Like, those things are all important. And sometimes we have a hard time finding them all across such a vast district, but in as much as our schools and our program leaders let us know about the successes of their students, we love to acknowledge it. And so all that to say, the spelling bee is just another opportunity where kids who you may not see highlighted or showcasing their talents in one realm definitely do it there, and they shine very bright.
And Spring Creek High School is going to be hosting speech and debate this weekend as well. So another super cool thing. And they were looking for judges. So if you don't have to have experience, and it's one of the coolest things that you can do. You can interact with students, and if you judge, you just come out of there in awe of what they're debating, the topics that the things that they're discussing, and just thanks to their advisors and their teachers and all the people who make speech and debate a reality too. I can see that's a real fertile ground for some.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're very impressive. And just yesterday, Matt McCarty, our board president, and we actually were judging together at the FBLA regional meet just yesterday. Well, I guess Tuesday. So by the time this comes out on Thursday, but that's the Future Business Leaders of America. And so to see them, that like they were doing mock interviews, they were doing public speaking, they were showcasing business plans, like wonderful things that these kids are doing. A lot of the time it's on their own time, right? Like these are after school programs. They're electing to spend their free time learning how to be good at public speaking, how to be orators, how to be prepared for a job interview. And I mean, those kids, they just impress the heck out of you. So I appreciate you saying you don't need to have experience, because I've judged at speech and debate tournaments too, dating back to when I was in Texas, as well as being here. I've helped with that. And I always love when I'm invited to help judge either at FBLA or at speech and debate or for whatever, because, since I've left the school site responsibilities of my career, I don't get as many opportunities to interact with the students, and it always grounds me to be there and see them. And it's easy to feel good and positive about the future of our kids when you see them in action with something they're truly interested in.
I was just going to say that too, that it will give you that feeling of confidence and say, okay, I think we're going to get through whatever it is. And then in the same note, February is Career Technical Education Month, and Elko County schools are also outstanding in that area as well.
Yes, we have a very robust and, successful CTE program. It's one of kind of the things we always, I guess toot our own horn about, is we do a great job and we try to expand those programs as much as we can. And it is CTE month. We'll get an update from our CTE coordinator, Heather Steele, at our next board meeting on February 18th. And very important to know is in the next, month to 2 months, our CTSOs, which stands for Career and Technical Student Organizations, they're going to be heading to state competitions over the next couple months, and that's for FBLA, FCCLA, FFA, Skills USA, HOSA. We have all these different student organizations that are connected to, we call those co-curricular organizations that are connected to CTE classes, and we wish them all the best, and you can bet that in April or May, somewhere around there, you'll start to hear in our board meetings and in recognitions about all the kids who were successful at state and will be heading to national competitions. I may even just bring Heather on over next month to talk with you and join us for our conversation to hear about the wonderful things, because we are always seeking to expand those programs and provide more opportunities for students to embrace something they're passionate about.
Well, in the interest of time, we'll just do a quick shout out too, because you will be back. The Science, Technology, Engineering, Math, known as the STEM Fair, used to be the Science Fair. It is March 10th through the 13th at the Convention Center. And CJ, we do know they need judges for that as well. And again, you don't have to be experienced. So.
Nope. Yeah, those projects are pretty incredible too. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had students winning based on cancer research projects, things like that. Like it's not volcanoes with baking soda. It's not all that. It's kids come up with original ideas, things they're interested in, and it's pretty fun to see what they come up with, and to walk around the entire fair and see all the projects and which ones won what ribbons and et cetera. And they range for, and it's not just our students either in the Elko County School District schools. We also get homeschool projects there. We get charter school projects there. And again, just highlighting the positive contributions of our young people all across the county, regardless of who or how they receive their education. We want to be able to highlight the good things they're doing.
Thank you, CJ. And then the last mention that we'll have today is the big item. I don't know why I didn't probably start with this, but we do know it will be on the agenda for Tuesday, the 18th school board meeting. That is the topic of the school calendar.
Oh, yeah. When's school going to start? That's an important one people want to know.
And when's it going to get out?
And when's it going to get out? Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Just that will be on the agenda on the 18th. Just quick recap for anyone who may have missed it. About a month ago, it was on the agenda. It did represent, the proposed calendar represented somewhat of I don't want to use that drastic, but there was enough of a change that it prompted the board to ask the unions and the district to go back to the drawing board a little bit and kind of restructure that to maybe find a compromise between what we're doing now and what was proposed. And so the calendar that is on the agenda, which is already posted, normally we post agendas on Thursday, but we've actually had it posted since Wednesday because of the holiday on Monday. So that agenda is posted, and if you want to see the calendar that is being proposed, if you just go to our board docs website, you can get there through our ecsd.nv or ecsdnv.net website. If you go to that website, you can get to our board docs, and under the agenda for next Tuesday, the 18th, you will see that calendar attached to the agenda item about the same topic. So,
all right.
Yeah, check it out.
Check it out. You can either be there in person or you can follow along online, but that's a great opportunity. Thank you, CJ, so much.
Yes, thank you as always for the time.